guys, it's Kayla, and today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 characters from Voltage Inc. games that I surprisingly found to be really good. These are characters that I wouldn't have normally gone for, are unassuming, and I honestly just played them on a whim and ended up falling in love with them. So everyone on this list by the end of the story really stood out to me and left an impression on me. So without further ado, let's get on to the list. First up, we have Tamaki Matsuba from Butler Until Midnight. I have to say, when this game first came out, I was way hyped and overly excited since butlers are my weakness. Sebastian from Black Butler, I see you. But I was left a little disappointed because, in my opinion, none of the characters that I played in the game, up until Tamaki of course, fit my idea of a butler. The canon character for the game ended up having a sweet story, of course, but for the majority of the route was an asshole, for lack of a better word, and the MC just isn't treated like a butler's mistress should be treated, in my mind at least. Then I played Aoi, who I was expecting to be extremely sweet and butlerly. They made him seem like he was going to be the really nice guy type. But again, I was disappointed. They did like the wolf in sheepskin thing with him, and he was the furthest from a butler of any of the characters I played in that game. So finally Tamaki's route came out, and I just decided to go ahead and play it, even though he didn't make an impression in the prologue really. He can't really be considered the quiet type, since that was obviously Kyo for this game, and he wasn't the mean type since that was the head butler's role. They were just portraying him as strict and robotic. Anyways, none of it did him justice because when I played his story, I just loved it. He treats the MC how I was wanting all along since downloading the game. He might be strict, but he's protective, and he might be a perfectionist, but it works so well on him. He's so adorable. There's drama, passion, humor, and everything you could ask for in a great route in his route. There's one particular scene that stood out to me when you come home with an injured hand, for reasons I won't say so I don't spoil anything, and you can't really do little things like washing your hair, getting dressed, so Tamaki ends up washing your hair for you, and that scene really just drives home what I wanted out of the game, like the butler-mistress relationship. He's your butler and he cares about you, so he ends up doing something maybe a little outside of the job description, and that creates a bond between the two of you to fall in love. Let's just say I could definitely feel the MC and Tamaki fall in love. I fell in love, so I would certainly recommend it to you if you're looking for an amazing butler-mistress love type of route. Next up is Sosuke Kikuchi from Finally in Love Again. This game as a whole is very unassuming in my opinion. The game seems like it would be like boring, but it's actually really realistic and romantic. I would venture to say that this game is the most realistic Voltage game on the market right now. The main character guy for the game is Aki, and his story was so good, as you would hope for in a main guy. To put it in perspective for you to show how realistic the game is, in Aki's route, in like the first chapter, you end up having a drunk one-night stand with him. Not the same old like, oh, somehow I just ended up in his bed, but nothing happened, haha. No, like you slept with him, and you have to work with him afterwards. So right away, the app struck me as very different from the other Voltage apps. However, out of all of the characters that were options for this game, there was one that didn't really fit or stand out in the prologue, and that was Sosuke Kikuchi. Maybe that's why I decided to play him. He's again a character that doesn't seem to have an archetype. He's a delivery man, which is also odd since the underlying story of this app is you needing a job as a pastry chef. So naturally all of the other route options are like famous pastry chefs and something to do with the industry. Anyways, Sosuke's just a delivery man, and he delivers mail to you just like anyone else would, and there doesn't appear to be a link between the two of you until you start to play his route and you realize he was actually good friends with your 2 twin brothers. They're younger than you, and as you spend time with him, you realize that you've known him in the past and he's remembered you all this time and has been in love with you since forever, which is so sweet. What's interesting really in this game though is that he's much younger than you. He's your younger brother's ages, which is maybe like 8 years younger than you. You're about 34 and he's 26, I think. So in the flashbacks, you're in high school and he's like an elementary school student admiring you from afar. And it felt really realistic, I think. Like, I think a little boy really would like have a crush on his friend's older sister and she wouldn't notice. And then how cool to run into each other years later and she doesn't remember you. I can just totally see him as a real guy. His personality is extremely sweet and passionate. He is a sailor, which is really interesting. He's passionate about sailing, which is very unique, and some of the great moments in the story happen when you take trips to where you grew up to to see him in a sailing competition. Also, his character design is like so cute. The story had a lot of layers and intricacies that made it feel realistic and of course made me fall for Sosuke. So if you're looking for something like that, I would highly recommend him. This next guy on the list is the older man, which is a type I literally never thought I would go for in a game, especially since they're kind of rare too. I can't even think of a comparable character to Joji off the top of my head. There's a few that are slightly older than you, maybe 3 or 4 years, like maybe Kurosawa from Metro PD, love his route by the way. Maybe Prince Yako from Be My Princess, but nothing like Joji, who's a full 10 years the MC senior. And it's even more scandalous in this route because you're 16 and he's 26. Yeah. So the premise of Dreamy Days in West Tokyo is that you're a high school student who grew up in West Tokyo, but you move overseas to England at a very young age, and 10 years later you ask your parents if you could go to high school abroad back in your hometown, and they agree. Your mom sets you up with her pen pal, who is a restaurant owner and landlord with a spare room for rent, and when you return to the town, you run into all of your old childhood friends, who are now, of course, super hot guys that are in your class. And your landlord turns up to be this guy, Joji, who you think you've never met before. He's really friendly and funny and just kind of treats you like his little sister. The other guys stand out more, obviously, because they're your age. They all have clear archetypes. The tsundere, the cutesy-fortsy type, the brisk yonke, the dere-dere, the sweet type, and I literally played all of the routes because I love this game so much. It was my first Otome game, so it's special to me. And I have to say, all of the routes in this game were on point and definitely lovable. So, after I finished everyone else in the game, I decided I would just go for it and play Joji's route. I mean, even though it might have not had an appeal at first, it had to be good since everyone else was, right? And it totally was. He's caring, protective, sweet, a little clumsy, but comforting. Comforting's like my favorite in a guy, maybe because I'm a Taurus, I really like comfort. Anyways, you can totally see why the MC falls for him and why they fall for each other, and the age issue, they handled it very well. They kept it appropriate and how it would and should be handled if it happened in real life. I don't want to spoil anything for this route because I had so many good surprises and twists that I think made the story so good. Just know that it's not what it seems on the surface. There ends up being more to Joji than he appears as just a small town restaurant owner, and there's a lot of adorable moments from the past that resurface and make the relationship even sweeter. I also love the bond that he has with your family too. But there is one negative thing about him, and that's that his season 2 lacked development. It didn't focus on him, and it just wasn't good in my opinion, so fair warning, but his original main story was so brilliant. Highly recommend it. Next up is Koichi from In Your Arms Tonight. Now this game is an older game. It has like so many route options. The newer Voltage apps maybe have 5 max, but this one has 10 or 11 I think, and the prologue is a 3-part prologue, so it's super long. Yeah, pretty intense. And the storyline gets even more intense, very different from any of the other apps. It's about being in an arranged marriage to a man named Koichi Natsukawa. In the prologue, you get married, and then at the honeymoon, you never seal the deal, and even when you move in with him after that, he gives you a separate room to sleep in and tells you not to bother him. Also, he gets home late all the time, has phone calls with a woman, and you basically come to the conclusion that he does have someone on the side. So you're feeling extremely depressed and distraught at your marriage. You get invited to a high school reunion and meet an assortment of guys there, and then you also meet guys at your job and also at a bar, I think, and you can choose them as a love interest. Basically, the premise is for you to pick a guy to cheat on your husband with and leave him for. I know, dramatic. So pretty much anyone who plays the game would want to play anyone but the shitty husband guy Koichi. However, I am a very loyal person by nature, and I had to choose his route because I didn't want to choose one that would make me cheat. I don't know, I just couldn't. I know that it's just a game, but I was immersed in it, okay? So Koichi's actually the only one that I've played from the whole game, but I still think he's an unlikely route. I also didn't expect it to be as good as it was. I thought it was just gonna make me sad. I mean, who wants to be cheated on and neglected? But honestly, props to Voltage because they literally turned it all around with this guy and made me fall in love with Koichi. Without spoiling too much, the cheating isn't exactly what it seems and even turns out to be a huge bombshell scoop at the end of the story. By the end of the story, I felt that Koichi was an admirable man, hardworking, earnest, and a realistic guy, which I really like those types. He ends up being sweet in the littlest ways, which makes me totally adore him. And even if for whatever reason you didn't like his personality, the story's wicked surprising, and I would recommend it based on the well-done drama alone. Finally, the last character on this list is Seiichiro Hayami from My Wedding and Seven Rings. Now this game as a whole, again, surprised me by how good it was. It's very unique for many reasons actually. First, the canon character of the game, Asahi I think he is, actually has 2 full main stories to buy. A dark and light version of himself of sorts, I would say. They have different storylines even though it's the same person, so that was strange. Also, the game has 2 borrowed characters from the hit game My Forged Wedding. I love that game. And those are my 2 favorites from it, Yamato and Rin. But although they have the same names and personalities, their lives are completely different, so it's almost like an alternate dimension version of Yamato and Rin, which was really interesting to see. Have to give a quick shout out to Rin's route because his route was so good, so many feels, but you already knew that. Anyways, in this game, you are the one who is in need of getting married. You are suddenly called to Mr. Hayami's office when the CEO of your company dies unexpectedly. You're wondering what any of this has to do with you when you find out that the CEO was actually your grandfather that you never knew you had. And he's making you pick who the new CEO is. He's put up a list of the top producers in the company and you have to choose one to marry, and that will decide it. A lot of pressure. This Mr. Hayami was your grandfather's right-hand man and kind of acts as the host of this grand dramatic affair. It's certainly not the route you're meant to pick. It would be like if Danganronpa was a dating sim and you wanted to choose Monokuma's route. Exactly, you wouldn't. But Seiichiro turns out to be the actual love of my life. He's one of those that doesn't really have an archetype, although they note him as cyborg, whatever that means. You really feel like you have no idea what he's thinking, and he's trying to get you to pick one of the men on the list, but all the while you're actually falling for him instead, even though he's not one of the proper options you're supposed to choose. It deals with themes of unrequited love and obligation extremely well, and the way it turns out is very well done. Especially considering I had no idea what to expect from this guy. Even his character design seems kind of average, but then he surprises you from episode 1 when you have to move in with him. He comes out of the shower and OMG you guys, best CG, I'll insert a pic for you. But when you start to uncover what he's thinking about and learn about his relationship with your grandfather, that's when I really fell for his character. He's been watching over you ever since you started at the company, and there's so many sweet scenes between the 2 of you. One of my favorite scenes is the one where he tells you that he'd secretly purchased you a birthday gift each year because he felt close to you from observing you all that time. And all of the gifts suit you perfectly, the whole thing's so sweet, and the scene literally made me want to cry. I could go on and on about Seiichiro, but I don't want to spoil it for you, so please play it for yourself. I wanted to make this video to show you guys that sometimes it pays off to take the road less traveled. Even in real life, if you get to know people that you normally might ignore, who knows, you might just fall in love for real. Anyways, that wraps up my top 5 unexpectedly great voltage routes. I hope you enjoyed my list, and as always, I'd love to hear from you guys. Which voltage men surprised you with an amazing love story? Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!